Boston Celtics have been in the thick of things for some time now in the modern generation and era of the NBA. Quite frankly, it all started when Jayson Tatum was drafted. Literally since the day he stepped foot into the NBA, he and the Celtics have been competing for championships at a high level without injuries completely derailing his team how they did in 2021. Although Jayson Tatum and the Boston Celtics have been competing for championships and being a top dog in the Eastern Conference, they haven't kicked down the door all the way down yet. Back in 2018, they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, but they unfortunately ran into what many consider to be the best player of all time at the peak of his powers. So they lost that series as they were young and good at the same time, but maybe just a couple years away at the time. In the following year in 2019, the Boston Celtics would go on to make the playoffs again and lose to the Milwaukee Bucks, who are also a contender headed by future all-time great Giannis Antetokounmpo. The chemistry with Kyrie Irving, Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Gordon Hayward, and the rest of the team did not go as planned, as last year it was free-flowing and a lot of other players got opportunities with the absence of their star players. Maybe too talented or maybe too many egos on the team, but a disappointing year for sure. Then you have the bubble year in 2020, in which they were in the conference finals again, but this time they would lose to the Miami Heat off the heels of beating the Toronto Raptors in a thrilling Game 7 series. This loss to the Miami Heat prevented a potential Celtics and Lakers matchup with LeBron James waiting on the other side. This team featured guys like Kemba Walker, who was seen as a solid Kyrie Irving replacement at the time, while Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown were blossoming into complete superstar players. Keeping track now, that's 3 separate seasons with championship aspirations, and they haven't made the finals yet. Although their stars were young, the whispers were already starting around this time. Then we move on to 2021, and this one is not as noteworthy because of the injury due to Jaylen Brown that caused him to miss the NBA playoffs. This left Tatum by his lonesome versus one of the best teams of our generation when they were healthy, and they took care of business and got Boston out of there in just 5 games. And the only game that Boston won was a 50-point mega bomb from Jayson Tatum. But again, the injuries and the roster weren't as good this time around, so you didn't really hear much about the Celtics this year. In 2022, however, it is a different story. The Celtics would be a middle-of-the-pack team a good way throughout the season, before one tweet seemingly changed the team's fate from Jaylen Brown. After Jaylen Brown tweeted out, "The energy is about to shift," the Celtics went 37-12. They were a completely different team, and once again, they were a title contender. This was their most successful playoff run as they made it all the way to the NBA Finals, beating previous demons like the Miami Heat and the Milwaukee Bucks in this run. However, up 2-1 with Game 4 at the TD Garden at home, they were met with the Steph Curry game that took all the momentum from Boston and transferred it right back to Golden State. They go on to lose this series as Tatum played one of his worst series as a star player, and the chatter became very loud around breaking up the team and potentially moving on. Whether that was trading Tatum, Brown, Smart, firing the coach, people wanted changes, and they wanted them sooner rather than later. The last chance with the core of Marcus Smart, Jayson Tatum, and Jaylen Brown was in 2023, and this one unfortunately ended in a negative way as well. A dominant regular season was rewarded with the 2nd seed in the Eastern Conference, and they fought their way to the conference finals, which by this time was almost expected and a given. From then, no one could have guessed that they'd go down 0-3 to the Miami Heat, who are an 8th seed entering these NBA playoffs. Maybe even more shocking, the Celtics won 3 straight games, avoiding elimination all 3 straight games, some at home, some on the road, to have a Game 7 back at the TD Garden, where unfortunately they failed to complete the comeback as Tatum tweaked his ankle early and the Heat were not about to choke a 0-3 lead to a team with its best player hobbled. So now we're going on multiple seasons where the Celtics cannot get it done, either in the Eastern Conference Finals or in the NBA Finals. Always close, but never fulfilling their true potential and their true destiny of winning an NBA championship. That leads us to this NBA season, where Marcus Smart was traded and Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis were brought in the offseason. Boston was one of the very best regular season teams of all time, with their versatility on defense with guys like Derek White, Jrue Holiday, Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis, and Al Horford. All of those guys are capable of defending multiple positions, and they had one of the best starting fives on offense of the modern era, captained by 2 now mature stars in Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown, who were both All-Stars, and even Derek White, who got some All-Star consideration earlier in the year. Kristaps Porzingis is also a 20-point scorer. They captured the 1 seed with weeks left in the regular season and drew the Miami Heat again in a playoff matchup, this time in the first round. This time the Celtics pretty much handled business as they should, winning in 5 games as the overwhelming favorite. It was interesting to note, and the Celtics will move on to fight another day. In the second round, the Boston Celtics were going to play the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are fresh off of a 7-game series with the Orlando Magic in the 4-5 spot. The Boston Celtics were again heavily favored in this series, and the Cavaliers did not have the same amount of talent as the Boston Celtics in this series. Boston was still going to take care of business again, disposing of the 4 seed in another 5 games. They did lose Game 2 of this series as well, in the same way that they lost Game 2 in the first round with a bad shooting night, and then compounded with some bad defense against the star players. However, Boston responded with their backs against the wall when they went to Cleveland and won both of the games on the road in a hostile territory, and like I said, closed this out in 5 and left not too much doubt in the minds of NBA fans. Now we fast forward to the current day, and the Boston Celtics have drew the Indianapolis Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals, which if you were to tell somebody 8 months ago, they would laugh at you. But this is the matchup, and the Boston Celtics are going to have to come to play. The main theme of the Boston Celtics playoff run so far has been taking care of business. They have been beating who is in front of them, and they've done it in 5 games both times. But that is not to say that they are not without concerns that they did drop a game on their home court to a much worse team like the Miami Heat. And if the Boston Celtics are going to lose, we probably know how it's going to look. It's probably going to be a lot of perimeter shots, some lackadaisical defense, not running enough sets and running some ISO ball, and just kind of chucking the ball at the rim instead of using their talent to dominate their opponent in more strategic ways. Another cause for pause potentially is Jayson Tatum. Tatum has been overall pretty good in the NBA playoffs. However, I would not say he's been great. I would not say that he's played at the level of an Anthony Edwards. I wouldn't say that he's played at the level of a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I definitely wouldn't say that he's played at the level of Nikola Jokic. I don't even think he's played at the level of a Jalen Brunson. Now, you might want to take this with a grain of salt because Jayson Tatum is on the best team of all of those players. His team is loaded, and they're going to be spreading out the wealth. And the other players that I just mentioned have to do a little bit more of the heavy lifting. But with that being said, I am accustomed to Jayson Tatum kind of doing better in the playoffs. And I'm definitely more accustomed to him if he's going to be taking a back seat to be more efficient, but that's just hasn't been the story this playoffs. Now, I'm not saying Jayson Tatum won't break out in these playoffs in these later rounds, as they will for sure need him to play like a superstar, but I am saying that these are the concerns that would be around the Boston Celtics right now. Have they been pushed? Have they been challenged? You play a Miami Heat team who was the 8th seed and hasn't been good all year, and then they were missing their best player, and you were the best team in the NBA, and you had the home court advantage. You play the Cleveland Cavaliers, who were off of a 7-game series and did not have Jared Allen. In the closeout game, they didn't have Jared Allen, Donovan Mitchell, or Caris LeVert. So you've been playing watered-down competition. And then in the Eastern Conference Finals, you drew the Indianapolis Pacers, who no one picked to be here. And let's be honest, the Pacers did beat who they had in front of them, and I take no credit away from them, as they've actually been a good team all year. But were they going to beat Damian Lillard, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and the Bucks in a playoff setting? Were they going to beat Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, maybe if Julius Randle was here, or even Bogdan, or even Mitchell Robinson? Were they going to take out that team? All of the competition that we had prepped for the Boston Celtics pretty much kind of failed out or was injured. So now they get the Pacers. And the Pacers are a problem in their own self. They have had one of the best offenses in the league all year. They play at a pace that is second to none, and they have pretty much the best bench in the NBA. Now, I don't want to call this a cakewalk, but this is one of the easier paths to this NBA Finals that I've seen in recent memory. Again, not taking anything away from it, but just calling it what it is. Even though it is an easy path, this will be the toughest series so far for the Celtics, as Tyrese Halliburton is finding his mojo back off that hamstring injury, and he's been having some pretty good nights, and he's proven that when his back's up against the wall, that he can go out and put up good performances. TJ McConnell is one of the very best bench players left in the playoffs. And speaking of bench players, like I said, the number one bench in the NBA this season was the Indianapolis Pacers. Guys like Obi Toppin are going to be coming off the bench. TJ McConnell is going to be coming off the bench. Isaiah Jackson, he's going to be providing energy. And then guys like Pascal Siakam, he is a champion and is an all-star forward that could try to go head-to-head with Jayson Tatum or Jaylen Brown. Aaron Nesmith is somebody that's going to be looking to shoot and defend and attack closeouts, and they're going to play at a blistering pace that if the Celtics try to match that pace, it could spell some problems for them. With all that being said, I expect again the Celtics to handle business and close out this series. If I had to give a prediction, I would say 5 games, but 6 games should be the max for this series and how far it goes. Now, if it was to go 7, I would be pretty scared if I was a Boston fan because I think that they are a much better team. They are much talented. And this far into their era, I think they should be ready to handle business against an opponent that was not supposed to be here. Also, handling business will give them time for the NBA Finals to rest and prepare for their toughest challenge of the Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum era, which will be playing either the Dallas Mavericks led by Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, or the Minnesota Timberwolves, who boast one of the best defenses in the NBA, and the young upcoming star in Anthony Edwards. As a conclusion, I believe this is the most important time in the Boston Celtics, Jayson Tatum, and Jaylen Brown era. This is clearly their window to win the championship. They had a window in 2022, made it all the way to the finals, but they lost. They had a window in 2023 last year, but they started off too slow, and you were never going to come back really from an 0-3 deficit. You open yourself up to role players going off and injuries, and both of those things decided to happen in 2023. And who knows, do you even beat the Nuggets if you get past the 0-3 deficit from the Miami Heat? Probably